Book 35 of 2019 was Dream Teams by Shane Snow. So this book is all about how working as a team and having a dream team can make you achieve more together than what you would ever think of achieving yourself. It's kind of a book that is championing working as a team, and I can kind of understand why it does that, because by having different viewpoints about something, you do challenge each other and you do come to some kind of innovation. So during the book, Shane Snow kind of discusses lots of teams that have happened that have worked excellently together. Like, he talks about some kind of Russian hockey team who only played well together, and when they got sold off individually to other teams, were horrific, and then when they came back together when they were like retired, they ended up being amazing again. And it was kind of like that idea of, if you get the right people together, you can become amazing and become innovative and become better than everybody else. But Shane Snow is also discussing how if you don't get the right people together, it'll all fall apart. So what he suggests is that if you have lots of people that have what's called cognitive diversity, so people who view things differently in different ways, because essentially everybody is brought up differently, and because they're brought up differently and they're of different cultures and different sections of society, they will have been treated differently, and that creates a different way of looking at the world. You have a different heuristic with which to operate from. So the idea is that if you get lots of different cognitively diverse people within the same team, in order for a person to communicate their ideas and opinions, they have to work harder to convince the other people of their ideas, because they won't see things the way that they do. So, in other words, it allows you to think more critically about a situation, because you are kind of thinking, okay, if I say this person might not see it or whatever, and then I'm going to have to think of how else to kind of portray it, and you might get challenge back from someone, and that challenge makes you think of it in a different way, and it kind of all builds up together and you end up being a really good team. What Shane Snow suggests is that by having different viewpoints, it allows you to see the same problem in a different way. So an example that he gives is that there was this kind of like, in fact, he gives quite a few different examples of women in law enforcement. And so they were trying to get these court papers served to somebody in the mafia, but you have to actually go up to them and serve them. And they couldn't think of a way to do it, because he'd always get away or whatever. And it was a woman in law enforcement who just decided to, she said that, the daughter, I think, was getting married, so she dressed up in a cocktail dress, went straight into the wedding and handed in the papers, because nobody expected a woman to be fulfilling that role, to be serving those papers, and no one thought to do that either. So it was almost like seeing things from a different point of view gives you an idea of, to do something else. They gave lots of other examples as well, not just that one. Gave some statistics as well about how women in law enforcement are less likely to shoot people, because they're less likely to just use physical brawn. They're more strategic, they have more emphasis on communication skills or whatever, because they work better for them, because they haven't got the reliance on their brawn and their physicality, because they are usually more physically weak. So it was kind of like suggesting that if you see things differently, you can solve the problem better, or in a way that other people haven't thought of before. And it gave some examples about some like problems of how to cut a cake and how to pour glasses of milk and stuff, and it kind of just challenges the way that you think, think in a more divergent kind of way. And then Shane Snow gives examples of how when you try and put teams together and they are too different, that they fall apart. He kind of suggests that you need a bit of tension in a group, a bit of kind of, he kind of describes it a bit like an elastic band. Like, if you pull an elastic band, it gets tension in it, and that's potential energy. So in a group situation, by having tension there, it's potential energy that then stimulates that group, and you perform well. But if you pull that too much, it will snap and it will break. If the tension is too much, the team will break down. And he gave examples of a merger between a company in Germany and in England, and it didn't work, not America, sorry, America and Germany, it didn't work because they had different cultural, organisational values that just clashed too much in terms of like how they, what their priorities were and what their values were. So there was too much tension there for them to work together. And it was kind of almost like, if you have no tension at all, and there's, you know, there's no tension, everyone gets on with each other, everyone views things the same way, people are inert. Like the inertia means that you can't think of anything new to do, anything innovative to do, and you know, it kind of makes you think of these companies that you're in where you kind of have to suppress yourself and agree with everybody, but you know, innovation never happens because you need tension, you need disagreement, you need somebody who is willing to challenge the viewpoint so that, you know, innovation can happen. And so that's kind of what was being discussed. I mean, essentially, we're wired to collaborate, like that's what we kind of want to do, but there has to be something there that makes us think more critically, as that tension needs to be there. And if it's not, you know, progress isn't made. I'm struggling at the minute now because there's nothing else to say about the book. Like, that is essentially what it's talking about. I found it interesting, but it could have been a little bit more insightful. It could have been a little bit more detailed, and I was bored a little bit at times. But if you don't know anything about teams and that's all new to you and whatever, it's worth listening to. I think it kind of made me think actually about maybe it is good to work in teams that don't feel like they're working. Because I've always been quite frustrated working in teams sometimes because I tend to be one of those people that does a lot of the work, and I always end up with people that are really lazy and social loafers and just sit back and let you do everything and then they take credit for it afterwards. I'm always in kind of teams like that, so I kind of find it quite frustrating sometimes, but I have been in teams where people have been as hardworking as me, and it has been a dream and it has been amazing. I think it's important to find people that have your values in terms of that, but then what this book is obviously suggesting is that they have different viewpoints and different ways of looking at things. And sometimes, you know, I've worked with people and they've said something and I'm like, wow, that's amazing, I wouldn't have ever thought of that. And you need different viewpoints sometimes. But yeah, that was it. So that's my review. That was very good, was it?